My name is Eleanor, I'm 70 years old, and just 6 months ago, my own son and his wife left me for dead on the side of a mountain highway. Before I tell you how I took the beautiful house they thought they owned, and exactly what the police found in their safe, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. The rumble of the engine is a sound that will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was a deep guttural sound, the sound of finality. I watched frozen, as the gravel crunched under the tires of my son Kevin's SUV. Through the rear window I could see the small, confused faces of my grandchildren, Lily and Noah, getting smaller and smaller. My daughter-in-law, Brenda, didn't even bother to look back. She just stared straight ahead, a faint, cruel smirk on her lips. Kevin's face was a mask of cold fury as he leaned out the driver's side window. "You need some time to think about what's really important, Mom," he yelled, his voice cutting through the crisp mountain air. "Family or money?" Then they were gone. The car disappeared around a sharp bend in the Blue Ridge Parkway, and a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight descended upon me. The wind rustled through the tall pines, the only sound in a world that had just collapsed. I stood there, utterly alone, with nothing but my purse and the clothes on my back. My suitcase, my blood pressure medication, my return flight ticket. Everything was in that car, speeding away from me. How could the boy I raised, the child I rocked to sleep and nursed through fevers, do this to me? How did I get here? A 70-year-old woman abandoned on a desolate stretch of highway miles from anywhere. It all started 6 months ago with a phone call that sounded like a cry for help, but was actually the first shot fired in a war I never knew I was fighting. Back then my life was peaceful. I was happily settled in a lovely retirement community in Orlando, Florida. My days were filled with book club meetings, bridge games with my friends, and the quiet joy of a life well lived. My biggest concern was whether to visit my sister, Carol, in the spring or the fall. My husband had passed away 5 years prior, and after a lifetime of taking care of others, I was finally taking care of myself. I thought the days of frantic, middle-of-the-night emergencies were over. I was wrong. The phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. It was Kevin. I smiled when I saw his name, but my smile faded the moment I heard his voice. It was thick with tears, a choked, desperate sound I hadn't heard since he was a little boy who'd fallen off his bike. "Mom," he sobbed into the phone. "Mom, we're in trouble. We're in real trouble." My heart immediately clenched. "Kevin, what is it? What's wrong? Are the children okay?" "The kids are fine," he said, his voice breaking. "For now. It's the house, Mom. Brenda, she lost her job. The architectural firm had massive layoffs. She's been trying to find something else for 2 months, but nothing's coming through. We're behind on the mortgage. The bank sent a final notice. We're going to lose everything. The house. Their dream home in Asheville, North Carolina. A beautiful craftsman-style house with a big yard for Lily and Noah to play in. They had worked so hard for it. I pictured my grandchildren's faces, sweet 12-year-old Lily with her artistic soul and rambunctious 8-year-old Noah with his boundless energy. The thought of them being uprooted, of losing their home, their friends, their stability, it was unbearable. "Oh, Kevin," I whispered, my own voice trembling. "I didn't want to call you," he continued, his voice heavy with shame. "I swear, Mom, I've tried everything. I've tried to get a second loan, I've sold some things, but it's not enough. We're going to be out on the street." He paused and then delivered the final calculated blow. The kids would be devastated. They loved that house. It's the only real home they've ever known. My own comfortable life, my peaceful retirement suddenly felt selfish. What was my financial security compared to the well-being of my son's family? "How much?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "How much do you need?" He hesitated, as if he was too ashamed to say the number. $95,000. It would cover the missed payments and give us a buffer until Brenda finds a new job. "Mom, I hate this. I hate asking you. But you're our only hope." My mind was racing, calculating. It was a huge portion of my retirement savings, the money my late husband and I had painstakingly saved. It was my safety net. But then I pictured Lily's smile and Noah's laughter, and my safety net didn't seem so important anymore. I took a deep, shaky breath, my own retirement, my own security hanging in the balance. I opened my mouth to give him my answer. "Yes," I said, the word leaving my lips before my brain could fully process the consequences. "Yes, Kevin. Of course. Family takes care of family. I heard a sharp, ragged sob on the other end of the line. Oh, Mom. Thank you. You don't know what this means. You've saved us. You've saved the kids. We talked for a few more minutes, him showering me with praise and gratitude, me trying to sound calm and reassuring while my heart hammered against my ribs. After we hung up, I sank into my favorite armchair, the floral one by the window, and stared out at the sunny Florida landscape. $95,000. It was a staggering amount. It was the money I'd earmarked for long-term care, for emergencies, for the simple peace of mind of knowing I would never be a burden to anyone. But then I thought about what my late husband, Richard, would have done. He was a practical man, a man who believed in contracts and handshakes, but he would have moved heaven and earth for his son. Still, his voice of caution echoed in my mind. Always protect yourself, Eleanor. Even with family. So the next morning I did something that felt both sensible and slightly shameful. I called my lawyer, Mr. Henderson, a kind man who had handled our estate planning for years. I explained the situation. It's a loan, of course, I said, trying to sound businesslike. Not a gift. Of course, he agreed gently. A loan of that size should always be formalized, Eleanor. For everyone's protection. He suggested a simple promissory note and, more importantly, a lien against their house as collateral. It meant that if they defaulted, I would have a legal claim to the property. It was a safety net for my safety net. When I presented the paperwork to Kevin, he seemed a little taken aback. For a split second I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, annoyance? Resentment. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a look of weary gratitude. Whatever you think is best, Mom, he said, signing the documents without much of a fuss. You're the one doing us the favor. You're a lifesaver. A week later, I sat in my bank and watched the teller authorize the wire transfer. I saw the numbers drain from my account, a lifetime of careful saving disappearing in a digital flash. A part of me felt a cold knot of fear, but a larger part felt the warm glow of a mother's love. I was doing the right thing. I was securing my grandchildren's future. I signed the check, feeling the quiet pride of a mother helping her child. I thought I had protected myself with that legal document, but I would soon learn that a piece of paper is no match for a heart full of deceit. For the first couple of months, everything seemed to be back on track. Kevin would call every Sunday just like he used to. He'd tell me Brenda was sending out resumes and had a few promising interviews. He'd put the kids on the phone. Lily would tell me about her art projects, her voice bubbling with excitement, and Noah would give me a play-by-play of his latest soccer game. They sent pictures of family dinners and weekend hikes. I'd look at their smiling faces in that beautiful house and feel a surge of relief. My sacrifice had been worth it. Then the calls started to change. They became shorter. Kevin always seemed to be in a hurry, on his way out the door or in the middle of something. Brenda, who used to pop on the line for a quick chat, was suddenly never available. She's in the shower, Kevin would say. Or, she just ran out to the store. The excuses were plausible, but the pattern was undeniable. I felt a growing distance, a sense of being managed rather than included. The real alarm bells started ringing when I tried to plan a visit. I was thinking of coming up for Noah's birthday in April, I suggested during one of our brief calls in March. There was a noticeable pause on the other end. Oh, Mom. Actually, that's probably not the best time. Brenda's parents are going to be in town, and you know how cramped the guest room gets. Disappointed, I let it go. Okay, sweetie. Maybe in May then. But May came and went with another excuse. This time it was a work trip for Kevin. Then, for Lily's school art show, Brenda's sister was supposedly staying with them. Every suggestion I made was met with a polite but firm roadblock. I started to feel less like their mother and more like a creditor they were trying to avoid. I pushed the doubts down. They were stressed. The job search was probably harder than they were letting on. I was just being a paranoid old woman. The truth came out, as it so often does, by accident. It was a Saturday morning, and I was calling to check in. I expected Kevin's voicemail, but instead, a bright, cheerful voice answered. Grandma Eleanor. It was Lily. My heart leaped. Lily, sweetheart. What a surprise to hear your voice. I thought you'd be at your soccer game. That's Noah, Grandma, she giggled. I don't have practice today. I'm painting my room. You are? What color? Purple. Daddy said you were too busy to come help, but I wish you were here. It's so much fun. The words hit me like a physical blow. Daddy said you were too busy. I hadn't been busy. I hadn't even been invited. I hadn't even known they were painting her room. My throat went dry. Before I could formulate a response, I heard Kevin's frantic voice in the background. Lily, who are you talking to? Give me the phone. Now. A moment later, Kevin was on the line, slightly breathless. Mom. Hi. Sorry about that. She grabbed my phone. I kept my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking. Kevin, I said carefully. Lily seems to be under the impression that I've been too busy to visit. Another pause. Longer this time. Mom, you know how kids are. They get things mixed up. Look, I'm actually running late for a meeting. Can I call you back? He never called back. Not that day, not the next. The casual way he'd lied, the way he'd used his own daughter to create a false narrative, it was chilling. His clumsy excuses didn't fool me. A cold dread began to creep into my heart. I decided right then that I wasn't going to wait for an invitation that would never come. I was going to find out the truth for myself. The following Friday, I boarded a flight from Orlando to Asheville. I didn't tell Kevin I was coming. The element of surprise felt necessary now. As the plane descended over the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, I allowed myself a sliver of hope. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe they were just embarrassed about their financial situation and didn't want me to see them struggling. Maybe this was all a terrible misunderstanding. I picked up my rental car at the airport and drove towards their suburban neighborhood. My stomach was in knots, a tangled mess of hope and anxiety. I pictured the kids' faces lighting up when they saw me at the door. I imagined a tearful reunion where Kevin would apologize for being so distant. When I turned onto their street, the first thing I noticed was the lawn. It was immaculate, perfectly manicured, the kind of lawn that requires professional landscaping. My hope faltered. Then I saw the car in the driveway, parked next to Kevin's familiar Ford F-150. It was a brand new gleaming white Lexus SUV. My heart sank. That was not the car of a family on the brink of financial ruin. I parked my rental at the curb and walked up the stone pathway, my legs feeling strangely heavy. Through the large picture window, I could see a living room that looked like it had been lifted from the pages of a magazine. The furniture was new, sleek, and modern. A massive flat-screen TV was mounted on the wall. All my generous assumptions, all my hopeful scenarios, evaporated in the face of this opulent reality. With a trembling hand, I rang the doorbell. I heard Brenda's voice call out from inside, bright and carefree. Kevin, can you get that? I'm in the middle of arranging the flowers for the dinner party tonight. Dinner party? They were entertaining? The door swung open and Kevin stood there. The color drained from his face when he saw me. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Mom, he stammered, his eyes wide with shock. What are you doing here? I came to surprise my grandchildren, I said, my voice unnervingly calm. May I come in? He glanced nervously over his shoulder before stepping aside. A forced smile plastered on his face. Of course. We weren't expecting you. As I stepped into the foyer, the scene in the open-plan kitchen came into full view. Brenda was standing at a marble island, arranging a huge, extravagant bouquet of lilies and roses in what looked like a very expensive crystal vase. She looked up, and her relaxed expression immediately tightened into a mask of polite surprise. Eleanor, what a pleasant surprise, she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. We had no idea you were coming. I wanted to see the kids, I said, my gaze sweeping over their luxurious surroundings. It's been too long. Oh, the kids. Kevin jumped in a little too quickly. They're at birthday parties. Both of them. What a coincidence, huh? They'll be so sorry they missed you. Both of them? On the same day? I asked, my voice laced with skepticism. Yes, different parties, of course, Brenda chimed in smoothly. Lily's at her friend Chloe's, and Noah's with his soccer teammate. You know how it is, their social calendars are just packed. The lies were so blatant, so poorly constructed, it was almost insulting. Everything felt staged. The house, their smiles, the convenient absence of my grandchildren. I decided to call their bluff. Well, that's fine, I said, settling into a plush armchair that felt like it was swallowing me whole. I can wait. I don't have a flight back until Monday. I watched them exchange a panicked look, a flicker of sheer terror that they thought I missed. I saw it, and in that moment I knew this was no misunderstanding. This was a calculated deception. As I drove back to my hotel, the sick feeling in my stomach wasn't just disappointment, it was rage. They thought I was a naive old woman they could fool. They had no idea I was about to uncover every single one of their lies. I checked into a modest hotel near the airport, my mind reeling. The luxury of their home, the casual lies, it didn't add up. But I wasn't going to leave with just suspicions. I needed facts. I decided to extend my trip and do a little investigating of my own. My generation may not have grown up with the internet, but we learn fast. That night, sitting in my sterile hotel room with a lukewarm cup of tea, I opened my laptop. It didn't take long. A quick search of public employment records and a visit to the website of a prominent Asheville architectural firm gave me my first answer. Brenda wasn't unemployed. She hadn't been laid off. In fact, 4 months ago, 2 months before Kevin's tearful phone call, she had been promoted to senior project manager. Her new salary was easily in the 6 figures. My breath hitched. The entire foundation of their story was a lie. The next day I delved deeper. A search of recent vehicle registrations in their county confirmed my fears. The Lexus SUV was registered to Kevin and Brenda Brooks, purchased just 6 weeks ago. The down payment they would have needed for a vehicle like that was substantial. It was an amount, I realized with a sickening lurch, that was suspiciously close to a large chunk of the money I had loaned them. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place on Sunday afternoon. I couldn't resist driving by their neighborhood one last time. And there they were. My grandchildren. Lily and Noah were in the front yard, laughing as they tossed a frisbee back and forth. There was no birthday party. There had never been a birthday party. I parked my car at the end of the street, hidden by a large oak tree, and just watched. I watched them play on the lush green lawn of the house I had saved, under the roof I had kept over their heads. And I finally accepted the devastating truth. My own son had lied to my face, used his children as pawns, and shut me out of their lives, all while spending my retirement savings on a life of luxury. The pain was a physical thing, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. That evening I called him from my hotel room. There was no preamble, no small talk. "Is Brenda working, Kevin?" I asked, my voice flat and cold. There was a long silence. "Mom, what is this about?" "It's about the fact that you took $95,000 from me under the pretense of saving your family from homelessness." I shot back, the anger finally bubbling to the surface. "And I come to find you living in a palace with a new Lexus in the driveway." Another pause, longer and heavier this time. When he finally spoke, his tone wasn't apologetic. It was defensive. "We never said we weren't going to pay you back. Just because Brenda got a promotion doesn't mean we're not still catching up." "A promotion she got 4 months ago? You bought a new car, Kevin. You're having dinner parties. This isn't a family that's catching up. This is a family that scammed their own mother." "I don't like your tone," he said, his voice turning icy. "We are grateful for your help, but that doesn't give you the right to monitor our spending or question our decisions." It was a loan, not a controlling stake in our lives. The conversation devolved from there. He accused me of being controlling. I accused him of being a liar and a thief. By the time I slammed the phone down, I was shaking. It was clear he felt no remorse. In his mind, he was the victim of my unreasonable expectations. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Brenda. I opened it, my heart pounding. It read, "Eleanor, perhaps you should focus on your little club activities and let us handle our own family. Not everyone from your generation understands the pressures we face today. You should be happy we are doing well." That text message was the final straw. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect. They hadn't just lied to me. They had dismissed me, patronized me, and treated me like an irrelevant old woman whose only purpose was to fund their lifestyle. But what happened next was a calculated act of cruelty I could never have imagined. After that disastrous visit, a chilling silence fell between us. I didn't call, and they certainly didn't. I spent the next few weeks in a fog of hurt and anger. I spoke to my lawyer, who confirmed that my lien on the house was ironclad, but I hesitated. Forcing my son out of his home felt like a final irreversible step. A part of me, the foolish, motherly part, still hoped he would come to his senses. Then 2 weeks later he called. His voice was different. It was warm, conciliatory, the voice of the son I thought I knew. "Mom," he said, "I know things have been tense. Brenda and I have been talking and we feel terrible about how everything went down. We were stressed and we handled it badly." I listened, my guard up, but my heart wanting to believe him. "We were thinking," he continued, "we should do something to reconnect. As a family. We're planning a little road trip for Labor Day weekend up the Blue Ridge Parkway. See the mountains, do some hiking. We'd love for you to join us. An olive branch. A chance to fix things." Against my better judgment, my heart leaped. Maybe he was sorry. Maybe they realized they had gone too far. The thought of seeing Lily and Noah, of being included, was a powerful lure. "That sounds lovely, Kevin," I said, a genuine warmth creeping into my voice for the first time in weeks. "Great. We'll pick you up on Friday morning. It'll be just what we need." I spent the next few days in a state of hopeful anticipation. I packed a small suitcase, bought new hiking shoes. I baked a batch of Noah's favorite chocolate chip cookies and bought a new sketchbook for Lily. This trip, I told myself, would be a new beginning. Friday morning they arrived in the new Lexus. The first few hours of the drive were pleasant, almost normal. We made small talk. The kids were in the back, absorbed in their tablets, but they seemed happy to see me. We stopped for lunch at a cozy diner off the highway. It was after we'd ordered that the trap was sprung. Once the kids were distracted, Brenda leaned forward, her expression serious. "Eleanor," she began, "we need to talk about the loan." She said the word with air quotes, a small dismissive gesture that made my stomach clench. "We've been looking at our finances," Kevin chimed in. "And honestly, paying back that $95,000 is just not realistic. It would set us back for years. It would mean no college fund for the kids, no family vacations." I stared at them, my coffee cup frozen halfway to my lips. "But we have an agreement, Kevin. A legal document." He waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, the paperwork. Mom, forget the paperwork. This is about family. You don't really need that money, do you? You have your pension, your savings. For us, it's life-changing. For you, it's just numbers in an account." The sheer audacity of it left me speechless. He wasn't just asking me to forgive the loan. He was framing my expectation of repayment as a moral failing. "So you're saying," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, "that if I expect you to honor your word, I'm choosing money over my own grandchildren?" "We're saying that if you insist on this," Brenda said, her voice turning sharp, "it's going to permanently damage our relationship. The kids can already feel the tension." The manipulation was so blatant, so cruel, it took my breath away. I stood up from the table. "I think we should go." The rest of the drive was thick with unspoken anger. A couple of hours later, Kevin pulled off the parkway into a remote scenic overlook. "Let's stretch our legs," he announced cheerfully. The place was beautiful but eerily deserted. We all got out of the car. The kids ran towards a picnic table. I was turned away from the car, looking at the vast expanse of mountains, when I heard 2 car doors slam shut. I spun around just in time to see the Lexus's brake lights flash. Kevin was in the driver's seat, Brenda beside him. He was starting the engine. I ran towards the car, my heart pounding in my ears. "Kevin, what are you doing?" He rolled down his window, his face devoid of any emotion. "We think it's for the best, Mom. This isn't working. We need a break from all this negativity." "A break? You're leaving me here? In the middle of nowhere?" I cried, grabbing for the door handle. It was locked. "Maybe this will give you some perspective," Brenda said coolly through her window. "Some time to think about what's really important." I could see Lily and Noah in the back seat, their faces pressed against the glass, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Daddy, why are we leaving Grandma?" I heard Lily's muffled voice. "Don't do this, Kevin. Please," I begged, banging on the window. He didn't even look at me. He just put the car in drive and pulled away. As I stood there watching my family drive away, a wave of pure terror washed over me. I was 70 years old, alone on a mountain with no one to call. For a moment I felt completely and utterly broken. Stay with me, because what they did next proves just how evil they truly were. Shivering in the cold mountain air, I checked my phone. 1 bar of service. I tried to call a taxi, but my credit card was declined. That's when I realized the horrifying truth. They hadn't just left me here. They had planned it down to the very last detail. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. My credit card was declined? It couldn't be. I had a zero balance. With shaking fingers, I redialed the number on the back of the card. My phone's single bar of service flickering precariously. After an agonizing wait, a customer service representative answered. "Yes, Mrs. Brooks," she said in a monotone voice. "The card was reported lost and was canceled about an hour ago. The request came from a secondary cardholder, a Ms. Brenda Brooks." I felt the air leave my lungs. An hour ago, they had canceled my credit card before we even got to the overlook. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision made in anger. This was a premeditated, ruthlessly executed plan. They intended to leave me stranded, helpless, and financially cut off. My legs gave out and I sank onto a cold stone bench, the full weight of their cruelty crashing down on me. How could I have been so blind? How could I have mistaken such calculated malice for a simple family squabble? I must have sat there for nearly an hour, numb with shock, before I saw the small sign I'd missed earlier. Gas and sundries, a quarter mile. It was a tiny sliver of hope in a sea of despair. I got to my feet, my body aching with a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air, and started walking. The gas station was little more than a shack, but to me it looked like a palace. Inside, a young man with kind eyes and a name tag that read Sam was stocking shelves. He looked up as I stumbled in. "Ma'am? Are you okay?" he asked, his brow furrowed with genuine concern. The simple kindness in his voice was my undoing. The dam of composure I had so desperately maintained finally broke. The whole story came tumbling out. The loan, the lies, being abandoned on the highway, the canceled credit card. Sam listened without interruption, his expression shifting from concern to disbelief, and finally to righteous anger. That's the most messed up thing I've ever heard," he said, shaking his head. "Hold on. You sit right here." For the next hour, this stranger, this young man, became my guardian angel. He brought me a hot cup of coffee, let me use the store's landline, and helped me look up bus schedules, none of which serviced this remote area. My first call was to my sister, Carol. When she heard my voice, she knew instantly something was wrong. "Eleanor? What is it? You sound awful." I told her everything. When I got to the part about being left on the highway, there was a dead silence on the other end of the line. "Carol? Are you there?" "I'm here," she said, her voice dangerously quiet, tight with a fury I knew all too well. "I'm getting in my car right now. Text me the address from Sam's phone. I'll be there in 3 hours." While I waited, Sam let me use the store's Wi-Fi. I logged into my online banking to see if they had done any more damage. They had. 2 new charges on my debit card, both made within the last hour. $650 at an electronics store in Asheville, and another $250 at a high-end steakhouse. They were celebrating their cruelty, toasting their victory with my money while I sat stranded and humiliated. As I was on the phone with my bank's fraud department, Sam called out, Ma'am? You might want to see this." He pointed to his own phone. A friend had just shared a public Facebook post from Brenda. It was a sweet, smiling photo of me and the grandkids from a Christmas past. The caption read, "Sending all our love and prayers to my wonderful mother-in-law, Eleanor. She's been having some confusing moments lately, and we're all so worried about her. Please keep her in your thoughts as we navigate this difficult time." Beneath it, a flood of comments from her friends. "Oh, Brenda, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Thinking of you all. Sending healing vibes to your mom." They weren't just abandoning me. They were building a narrative. They were painting me as a senile, confused old woman to discredit me before I could even tell my side of the story. They were trying to poison the well, to ensure that no one would ever believe me. Seeing that Facebook post, seeing my own face used in their web of lies while they were out spending my money, something inside me snapped. The hurt turned into ice-cold resolve. They wanted a war? They were about to get one. 3 hours later, Carol's car skidded into the gas station's small parking lot. She burst out of the driver's seat before the engine was even off, her face a storm cloud of fury. She didn't say a word. She just wrapped me in a fierce protective hug. Those absolute monsters, she hissed into my hair. I swear to God, Eleanor, I will make them pay for this. On the long drive back to her place, we laid the groundwork for my counterattack. The grief and shock were still there, but now they were overlaid with a cold, hard layer of determination. Carol, ever the pragmatist, helped me channel my anger into a clear plan. The first thing I did when I got back to Orlando was call my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. I didn't just tell him they had defaulted on the loan. I told him everything. The abandonment, the stolen money, the slanderous Facebook post. His professional calm was punctuated by sharp intakes of breath. Eleanor, this goes far beyond a simple breach of contract, he said, his voice grim. This is financial elder abuse, and possibly reckless endangerment. We are not just going to collect your money. We are going to hold them accountable. The next day, a formal demand letter was sent via courier to Kevin and Brenda's address in Asheville. It was legally unambiguous. They had 30 days to repay the full $95,000, plus interest, or foreclosure proceedings would begin immediately on the house. The lien I had insisted on, the one Kevin had subtly resented, had just become my most powerful weapon. The phone calls started within hours of the letter's delivery. It was Kevin, his voice a frantic, desperate mess. Mom, what is this? This lawyer letter? It's a mistake, right? There's been a huge misunderstanding. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. The messages grew more frantic than angry. Mom, pick up the phone. You can't just sell our house. Think of the kids. You're destroying your own grandchildren's lives over money. Then came the threats. If you do this, you will never see Lily and Noah again. I will make sure of it. I'll tell them their grandmother chose a pile of cash over them. I'll get a restraining order. I'll tell everyone you've lost your mind. His words, meant to terrorize me, had the opposite effect. They solidified my resolve. He was confirming everything I already knew. He was a cornered animal, willing to use his own children as shields and weapons. But his threats about my mental state, combined with Brenda's Facebook post, made me realize that a simple civil suit wasn't enough. They were already trying to build a case that I was incompetent, an unstable old woman making irrational decisions. I needed more than just a legal agreement. I needed undeniable proof of their malice and my own sanity. I needed to go on the offensive. That's when I made a decision that would change the course of this entire battle. I went online and searched for the best private investigator in Orlando. I found a man named Frank Morrison, a retired police detective with a reputation for being relentless and thorough. I called him that afternoon. Mr. Morrison, I said, my voice steady. My name is Eleanor Brooks. My son and his wife have stolen a great deal of money from me, and are now trying to declare me mentally incompetent to avoid paying it back. I need you to find everything. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mrs. Brooks, he said, his voice a low gravel. In my experience, when families go to these lengths, the truth is often ugly. Are you prepared for what I might find? I thought of the cold mountain air, of Brenda's smirk, of Lily's confused face in the window. Frank, I said. They abandoned me on a mountain and tried to convince the world I was crazy. I'm prepared for anything. Frank called me back in just 48 hours. His voice was grim. Eleanor, he said. It's much, much worse than you think. This isn't just about your son's poor choices. You've stumbled into something far more sinister. I met Frank at his small, cluttered office the next day. The air smelled of stale coffee and determination. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He gestured for me to sit and slid a thick file across his desk. Let's start with the money, Eleanor, he began. Kevin doesn't just have a spending problem. He has a severe online gambling addiction. I pulled his bank records. Over the last 2 years, he has lost just over $200,000 betting on sports. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. 200,000. It was a sum so large I could barely comprehend it. The story about Brenda losing her job was a complete fabrication, but you already knew that, he continued, his eyes fixed on me. What you didn't know is that she wasn't just a passive participant. She was the architect of this entire scam. The loan you gave them never touched their mortgage. It went directly to paying off high-interest credit card debt they'd racked up to cover his gambling losses. He paused, letting the weight of the information sink in. But he was just getting started. This wasn't their first time, he said, sliding a new set of documents towards me. 2 years ago, they borrowed $30,000 from Brenda's own parents. The story then was that Noah needed money for urgent, experimental medical treatments for a rare condition. But Noah is perfectly healthy, I whispered. Exactly, Frank said, his voice hard as granite. The money went straight to a casino in Biloxi. When her parents started asking for it back, Kevin and Brenda cut off all contact. They haven't seen or spoken to their grandchildren in over a year. I felt sick. This was their pattern. Exploit the love of elderly parents, take their money, and then discard them like trash. My case wasn't a one-off. It was a practiced routine. There's more, Frank said, his expression darkening. Brenda is careless on social media. He turned his computer monitor towards me. It was a screenshot of Brenda's private Instagram page, which he had managed to access through a source. The photos were a gallery of their deception. A picture of Brenda showing off a new Louis Vuitton handbag, the caption reading, "A little retail therapy thanks to a very generous family investment. #blessed. Another of them clinking champagne glasses at a fancy restaurant. Celebrating our financial turnaround. So grateful for family who helps out. #inheritance curly." Each post was a poisoned arrow aimed directly at me. But the worst one, the one that made me feel like I couldn't breathe, was a picture of their newly renovated kitchen. Gleaming granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, a designer's dream. The caption read, "Kitchen reno complete. It's amazing what you can do when family loans you money you never have to pay back. Some people are just so gullible. #suckerborn every minute." Gullible. Reading those words, gullible, written by the woman who called me mom, felt like a physical punch to the gut. She wasn't just a thief. She was gloating about it. She was mocking my love, my trust, my sacrifice. But Frank wasn't done. He had found evidence of a larger, more organized scheme, and I was just their latest victim. Frank leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "This isn't just two desperate people making bad choices, Eleanor. They've had help. For the past year, they've been working with a man named Martin Thorne. He calls himself a family financial consultant, but he's a disgraced financial advisor who lost his license for fraud a decade ago. His specialty is helping adult children unlock the assets of their elderly parents." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a family problem. This was a criminal conspiracy. Thorne coaches them, Frank explained. He helps them craft the sob stories, teaches them how to manipulate, and advises them on how to hide the money. In return, he takes a 60% cut of whatever they manage to extract. 60%. They had thrown their family away, abandoned me on a mountain, for a fraction of the money they stole. The revelation was sickening. Armed with Frank's explosive report, bank records, screenshots, the testimony from Brenda's estranged parents, I walked into the district attorney's office with my lawyer. We didn't just have a civil case anymore. We had a criminal one. The assistant district attorney, a sharp young woman named Ms. Ramirez, listened to our story, her expression growing more grim with every detail. When we showed her Brenda's Instagram posts and the information about Martin Thorne, she closed the folder decisively. "This is a criminal enterprise," she said. "We are opening an immediate investigation into Kevin and Brenda Brooks, and this Martin Thorne, for charges of felony fraud, financial elder exploitation, and conspiracy." The wheels of justice began to turn, and they turned faster than I could have imagined. But Kevin and Brenda, feeling the net tighten, made one last desperate move. My phone rang one afternoon. It was the fraud department from my investment bank. "Mrs. Brooks, we're calling to verify a recent transfer request from your retirement account," the agent said. "A request for $50,000 to be wired to an offshore account." "I did not make that request," I said, my voice shaking with fury. They had gotten my account information, probably during one of their visits, and were trying to drain me dry before they got caught. I immediately called Detective Miller, the lead investigator on the case. That attempted transfer was the final nail in their coffin. It proved their intent to continue their crimes, and gave the DA everything they needed to accelerate the process. Less than a week later, Frank called me. "They're getting ready to run Eleanor. They just sold the Lexus back to the dealership for cash. And I have a source that says they've been looking at rental properties in Texas. near the Mexican border. The thought of them escaping, of them getting away with everything, was terrifying. But the thought that terrified me more was that they would take my grandchildren with them. I relayed the information to Detective Miller. He assured me they were ready to act. The call came the next morning. It was Detective Miller. "Ma'am, they're in custody," he said. "We executed the warrants an hour ago. We got to the house just as they were loading suitcases into a U-Haul trailer. They had the kids with them. Passports were on the kitchen counter." A wave of relief so powerful it made my knees weak washed over me. They were caught. It was over. But the relief was immediately followed by a chilling, urgent question. What would happen to my grandchildren? With their parents in custody and facing a battery of felony charges, Lily and Noah were placed into the temporary care of Child Protective Services. The thought of my innocent grandchildren, already traumatized, being lost in the foster care system was a new kind of nightmare. I called Carol immediately, my voice choked with panic. "Carol, the kids. They're with strangers." Her response was instantaneous, without a shred of hesitation. "Not for long," she said fiercely. "I'm calling them right now. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll become their legal guardian. They are family, Eleanor. They're coming with me." And she did. It was a mountain of paperwork, background checks, and home studies, but my sister, my fierce, loving sister, moved heaven and earth. Within a week, Lily and Noah were on a plane to Orlando to live with their great-aunt Carol. Meanwhile, the legal process moved forward. The court placed an immediate freeze on all of Kevin and Brenda's assets. The foreclosure on the Asheville house proceeded swiftly. When it sold, after paying off the remaining mortgage and legal fees, I recovered every penny of my $95,000, and then some. The first thing I did was call Brenda's parents. It was a difficult call to make. I found their number through Frank. A hesitant, elderly woman answered the phone. "Mrs. Martinez?" I said. "My name is Eleanor Brooks. I'm Kevin's mother." There was a stunned silence and then a soft sob. "Oh dear God," she whispered. "We saw it on the news. We are so sorry for what our daughter has done to you." "You have nothing to be sorry for," I told her, my own eyes filling with tears. "We are both victims of the same crime." We talked for over an hour. They told me about the $30,000 they'd lost, money they had saved for their own medical care. They told me how Brenda had cut them out of her life, forbidding them from seeing their own grandchildren. By the end of the call, I knew what I had to do. The next day, I wired them $30,000. It wasn't about charity, it was about solidarity. It was about two families shattered by the same greed, helping each other pick up the pieces. With the children now living just 20 minutes away, my quiet retirement community suddenly felt very far away. I was spending every day at Carol's house, helping the kids with homework, taking them to parks, trying to create a bubble of normalcy in the midst of their chaos. One evening, after we had tucked the kids into bed, Carol and I were sitting on her porch. "This is working," she said, swirling the ice in her tea. "But this house is too small for the four of us long term. And you're driving back and forth every day." "I know," I said. She looked at me, a determined glint in her eye. "So let's fix it. Let's do this for real, Eleanor. Let's you and I build a home for these kids. Together." The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. To uproot my life again at 70? But for what? To be with the only family I had left. To give my grandchildren the stability their parents had stolen from them. "Okay," I whispered, a smile spreading across my face. "Let's do it." We sold both of our homes. We pooled our resources and bought a beautiful, sprawling single-story house in a quiet, family-friendly suburb of Orlando. It had a huge backyard for Noah to practice soccer, a sun-filled studio space for Lily's art, and most importantly, a completely separate in-law suite for me. It gave me my independence while keeping me right where I needed to be. We were building a new life from the ashes of betrayal, creating a new kind of family, a chosen family, forged not by obligation, but by love and resilience. There were tough conversations and a lot of therapy for the kids, especially with the upcoming custody hearings. But slowly we started to heal. And if you think this is the end of the story, you'll want to hear what happened in the courtroom. The trial date was set. Kevin's lawyer reached out with a shocking request. He wanted me to write a letter to the judge, asking for leniency. My decision would determine his fate. The lawyer's request hung in the air for days. A letter for leniency. A mother's plea for her son. It was the role I was supposed to play, the one society expected of me. Forgive and forget. Keep the family together no matter how broken. I thought about it. I truly did. I thought about the little boy who used to hold my hand, the teenager I taught to drive, the man I'd watched become a father. But then I thought about the cold mountain air, the terror in my grandchildren's eyes, and Brenda's mocking Instagram post calling me gullible. When the day came for victim impact statements, I walked to the courtroom podium, my hands steady. I did not have a letter for leniency. I had a statement. Your Honor, I began, my voice clear and strong, my eyes finding Kevin's across the courtroom. For most of my life, I believed that family was an unconditional bond. I believed it was my duty as a mother to give, to sacrifice, to forgive no matter the cost. My son and his wife used that belief against me. They saw my love not as a gift, but as a weakness to be exploited. They didn't just steal my money. They tried to steal my dignity, my sanity, and my relationship with my grandchildren. I paused, taking a deep breath. But they failed. They failed because they underestimated me. And they failed because they don't understand what family truly is. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect. It's about trust. It's about showing up. It's my sister, who drove 3 hours into the night to rescue me. It's a young man named Sam at a gas station who showed me more kindness than my own son had in years. It's even the parents of my daughter-in-law, who shared my grief. That is my family now. I looked directly at Kevin. There were tears streaming down his face, but I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a profound, quiet peace. I am not here today to ask for revenge. I am here to ask for justice. For myself and for every other elderly person who has been made to feel small, invisible, or foolish by the very people who should have protected them. I walked back to my seat. The courtroom was silent. Kevin was sentenced to 10 years in a state prison for felony fraud and financial elder exploitation. Brenda, who the investigation proved was the mastermind and who showed no remorse, received a 15-year sentence. Their accomplice, Martin Thorne, was sentenced to 20 years, and was ordered to pay millions in restitution to the dozens of other families he had helped destroy. The years that followed weren't always easy, but they were full. They were real. Lily and Noah thrived in the stable, loving home Carol and I built for them. Lily blossomed into an incredible artist, winning scholarships to art camps and filling our home with beautiful, vibrant canvases. Noah became the captain of his soccer team, a kind and protective young man who was adored by his friends. They had therapy, they had tough questions, they had moments of sadness for the parents they had lost, not to prison but to greed. But they were healing. They were happy. I never became a famous national advocate. That wasn't my style. But I did start a small, informal support group at our local community center. We call it Eleanor's Circle. It's a place for other parents and grandparents who have faced similar betrayals. We drink coffee, we share stories, we cry, and we help each other find the strength to fight back, just like I did. We talk about lawyers and custody battles, but mostly we talk about reclaiming our lives. I learned that the best revenge isn't selling someone's house out from under them. The best revenge is a life well lived. It's watching your granddaughter win an art competition. It's cheering so loud at your grandson's soccer game that your voice is hoarse the next day. It's sitting on the porch with your sister, laughing about old times. It's building a new family from the broken pieces of the old one, and realizing it's stronger and more beautiful than you ever could have imagined. They tried to break me, but instead they set me free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I know I'm not the only one who has gone through something like this. My question for you is, have you ever had to cut ties with a family member to protect your own peace? Let me know in the comments below. Your story matters. And if my story resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. You are not alone.